All right, going into number 3, financial matters.
All right, number 3 is financial matters. This is a large amendment to 141. This is, we start up our summer camps, summer learning camps here soon. And we found out, obviously late in the game, that we would need to run our funding for the summer camps through our 141 and then get reimbursed through ESSER. The reason given was because you had a blend of both state funds and federal funds. So, on January 22nd of 2021, the Tennessee General Assembly enacted the Tennessee Learning Loss Remediation and Student Acceleration Act. It was to address learning loss of students due to COVID-19 related school closures. Through this new law, all districts in Tennessee are required to offer learning loss remediation summer programs for students in grades K-8 starting in the summer of 2021. This general purpose school fund amendment is to budget $4,065,633 in state and federal funding for the operation of the state-mandated summer camp. The camp will host over 7,200 Rutherford County school students in grades K through 8 during the month of June 4th at 14 school sites, and this includes funding for camp staff salaries, an SRO, crossing guard, transportation for students. Funding for the student nutrition services is a separate budget amendment in the school centralized cafeteria fund, and funding for the high school summer credit recovery school, along with the non-payroll items for the K-8 summer camps, will be accounted for in federal projects fund, utilizing our ESSER 2 and IDEA funds. Motion to amend the general purpose school fund budget as presented for the operation of the 2021 Rutherford County Schools Summer Bridge Camps to comply with Tennessee Learning Loss Remediation and Student Acceleration Act.
Any questions from the board? Do we have a motion?
I move to approve.
Ms. Bratton, thank you. Do we have a second? Ms. Johnson? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 1.
All right, last we met, one of the things we're missing out of our budget were our revenues, and that's something you don't want to miss much. So soon thereafter, I think it's 2 weeks ago, we got our budget, our revenues back. One of the things we were waiting on was the hold harmless, and our April estimates came in a little bit higher than the previous year, therefore we were not held harmless. In fact, I think we're going to have a small amount of growth. Is that correct, Mr. Bodery?
A little bit, small amount of growth.
All right, Mr. Bodery is going to take us through the revenue side of our budget.
You have in front of you a packet, and right behind the budget amendment that Mr. Spurlock just walked through and that you voted on, you'll have a two-page listing of our revenues. And on the first, you'll see on the first column it says at the top 21-22 budget, and it details below that in that column the revenue estimates for this next fiscal year. In the next column to the right of that, you have the amended 2020-21 current fiscal year revenue budget. Now, sorry, I'm going to take this off so you all can hear me.
Absolutely.
I sound muffled to myself, so I'm sure I'm... Then on that third column right next to the current amended revenue budget, you see the over or under for each of these line items when you compare it to the current fiscal year budget, amended budget, to the original estimated revenue budget for next fiscal year. So let's go ahead and walk down these lines. If you see anything that you'd like to ask me about, feel free to. I'm going to just hit the large variances. If you notice on the current property tax, and we'll touch on that in a little bit in a moment additionally, you can see we have got an updated estimate in for what the penny on the property tax will bring for next fiscal year. You know, the property assessors sending over more pickup taxes on the assessed rolls to the to the finance director for the county. I've received those updated numbers, and as you can see right now as we stand, revenue for current property tax will be just over $3.6 million more on the original estimate for next fiscal year than for this current year. Small changes for trustee collections and clerk and master collections dealing with the property tax. The next large item is, I draw your attention to, is that 40162, that is pay in lieu of taxes, local utilities. As you notice, there's a drop of over $800,000 there in that line, and that is the loss of the payment in lieu of taxes from Murfreesboro Electric Department from the sale going to Middle Tennessee Electric, whereas the county school system received for over 50 years that annual payment. We will now receive a portion of what's called ad valorem tax, which is spread just the same as the property tax levy to the different county funds that receives a property tax levy to it. So a portion of that increase in that first line of the current property tax comes from that ad valorem tax that Middle Tennessee Electric is paying, along with regular growth. But it obviously, we had a loss there. The remaining funds that's in that pay in lieu of taxes for local utilities, that is from the Nashville Electric Department. They have a portion of a service area in the northern part of the county, so they pay a payment in lieu of taxes to us. And that $151,745 is our portion less a shared portion that's going to the Murfreesboro public school system based on the same as how we share it with the property tax with them.
And I think it's worth noting that that's a substantial amount of money from revenue that's already stretched in. So, just keep that in mind.
Yes. Dropping down, in local option sales tax, and this is our darling in our revenue right now. As you can see, we, with a conservative estimate, is over $9.3 million additional in local option sales tax revenue that we're budgeting over the current fiscal year. That seems like a substantial increase, and it is, but also keep in mind that when we passed the budget, when we brought the budget to you folks this last time, we actually set back the sales tax estimate for the fiscal year, last fiscal year, the original, and then we dropped it a small amount even more than that, to the point that we actually had to come back in July to amend it a little bit just to meet maintenance of effort. Now, going forward, we've seen very good growth, double-digit growth on the local option sales tax. So that, I believe, is a good conservative estimate for what we'll collect in additional sales tax going forward. One of the things that is driving that is they changed, with the State Department of Revenue, they changed the way they did online sales tax collections. It used to be when you did purchase to online, the State Department of Revenue would have the local option sales tax remitted by zip code, and typically that would be like if you had a zip code where you had, like, for instance, Murfreesboro, I believe it's either 5 or 6 zip codes that the city of Murfreesboro Incorporated either makes up or has a portion of that zip code in the city limits. Well, they would automatically just get that sales tax based on the zip code. With the new way the State Department of Revenue is collecting, they collect called Cookie Nexus. So they would actually say, okay, like Miss Maxwell, if she lived outside I know you live in town, but if you lived outside the Incorporated, if you ordered something from your house, it would actually go back to the unincorporated. And also with Amazon having a distribution center here, we actually receive that as well, that sales tax coming from that site. So all that to say is that is, yes, people are buying quite a bit, but also you're seeing that increase due to changes with the State Department of Revenue and how they remit sales tax back to the municipalities and the counties.
And also the most volatile form of revenue.
Yes.
It can go up and it can go down.
It is actually per tasser, sales tax is the most volatile local sale or local tax there is per tasser. Wheel tax, we see a modest growth in that. Business tax, we're seeing a trend upwards in that as our economy grows. And the interesting one, it's not a large increase, but the almost 200,000 increase in local option mixed drink tax, that in part goes back to, if you recall, the county commission voted to put on the referendum for mixed drink tax sales in the unincorporated section of the county, and over 75% of the voters voted for that, and a portion of that, I'm sure, of that increase in revenue is being driven by the voters choosing that, to allow that outside the city limits of Murfreesboro. Okay, dropping down, as you can see, there's very de minimis changes in the charges for current services. And then below is the other local revenues. One large difference is a drop in E-rate funding. That came from the construction, that we got some reimbursement for E-rate for Rockville High School when they were doing wiring and putting in internet connection and wire drops for that large school. We got some additional funding through E-rate for that for last time. And that's a pure reimbursement grant. Dropping down even more, we see the BEP, the governor made good on his promise on the 4% for the BEP funded positions. So we see a $3.7 million increase in the BEP for this next fiscal year. That's all straight from our April estimate. And like Ms. Spurlock said, they had delayed that estimate by over a month. So as we talked about from the first time the board voted, we did not have a BEP estimate, not even the first one. So I didn't want to lay anything in front of you until that was passed by the state legislature about the hold harmless, and also what we would get on the estimate from the governor's recommended budget. Since then, of course, we now have those April estimates. So you can see we have a substantial increase there. But I want to bring your attention to, if you notice the 3.7 mil increase, compare it to the local tax base, and you can see who's carrying this budget. It's not the state, it's our local taxpayers. Early childhood ed, just a small increase. Driver's ed, that's tied to fines, from traffic fines, so I decreased that since the courts are just now reopening and they've got quite the backlog. State shared revenue TVA, just from what we're receiving from the state on this, I decreased that slightly. An interesting thing on the state shared revenue from the TVA, how that's apportioned out to the state, almost about half. That you would think that with the city of Murfreesboro, they receive state shared revenue as well from the TVA, but they get theirs based totally on population of their city, whereas all municipalities get that based on the share, on population only. For a county, the counties receive the TVA sharing based on 43% population, 43% land mass, and 14% TVA-owned land within the county. So we wind up with Stewart County with about 14,000 citizens in it, getting more revenue than Rutherford County for TVA revenue share. So that is based on a archaic revenue sharing law from like the 1930s. So that, if there was anything that needed updating at the state, they definitely would want to look at, you know, allowing the counties to have the exact same revenue share, you know, just scheme as the cities, just base it on population, be done. As you see below on this, just IDA, that's just high needs, additional funds for our high need SPED students. And I put a conservative number there, and we'll adjust if we see additional like we did this year. We see on that 47,309, that COVID, that's just that one time for the 2% temporary, you know, pay increase. And the board voted to reclassify that to a transfer in from Fund 142 this last time that you met. That'll go in front of Health and Ed and Budget tomorrow night with that budget amendment that you voted on the last time we met. And then, of course, other federal through state, there was a grant, some grants we got last year, and if we bring those in, any one-time grants, we'll bring that as a budget amendment like we've done in the past to this board. Below that, you see conservative estimate for ROTC reimbursement for ROTC department. Then scrolling down, we see indirect costs of $260,470. That's indirect costs that we take off of federal grants in our federal projects funds, and then a small transfer in for school nutrition items, reimbursing maintenance for work done over in the cafeterias. Below that, you see the $1.2 million. That's additional transfer that the board voted on this last time, and that it will, that of course is that repayment of costs that already been incurred due to COVID, reimbursing the GPS fund. And you have a bottom line for revenue, $426,474,041. And that's your revenue in detail to the dollar as it stands right now. If you got any questions on the revenue side before we move, obviously that will update as we go forward with the commission. If there's no questions on that, what I'll do is I'll have you turn the page. And what I have in front of you is I touched on, this is the property tax. And the updated, I gave you the first estimate for what property tax and what a penny would bring on the levy. This is the updated one that I had referenced earlier. As you can see, on the bottom right-hand corner, we see the updated revenue per penny. A penny on the general fund in Rutherford County now brings over, an unshared penny now brings over $1 million. $1,899 is what a unshared penny, that would be a penny like in our education capital projects fund. That's what it'll bring. And then the schools, because we share based on that weighted average daily attendance with the city school system. And as you can see, on the WFTE ADA allocation, we actually increased slightly, so we have 85.55% of the student population, the public student population in Rutherford County. And based on that, that is the revenue that we would bring in our estimate, $89,685,596. And you'll notice that in the revenues I just went through under current property tax, that's the exact dollar number I put in for our current property tax estimate. Note the city takes from the county property tax $15,148,531 as by state law. If you have multiple public school systems, you share based on that weighted average. Notice that a shared penny with the schools generates $856,269. remember that number. Okay, anybody have any questions on this? Like I said, that's the most current estimated property tax estimate. You can also see the current levy on that page. On the right side under 2021 proposed tax rate and our current adopted rate, you can see our general purpose school fund, that's under education, is 1.0474 cents on the levy going to education, which of course we give 15 million of that to the city school systems. And then right below that is the 7.5 cents to our education capital projects funds, which we do not share any of that based on a state appellate court and affirmed by the state Supreme Court ruling with McMinn County versus Athens. If anybody doesn't have any questions, we'll move on to this one-page summary. What you have with this one-page summary and behind it, I have they're clipped together, I have 3 separate different budgets for you. And as you can see on this one-page summary, what you have in front of you is what a 3% pay increase will do to a budget, a 4% increase would do with this budget, and a 5% increase. So let me go down to this 5%, since that's where we're at right now. As you can see on this first line, we have an estimated July 1, 2021 assigned, unassigned beginning fund balance. That's the available fund balance that's not restricted for specific uses in our fund balance. Beginning, that's the estimate right now for the beginning of this coming fiscal year. We see $42,806,693 in that assigned, unassigned fund balance. You add to that $42.8 million the $426,474,41 that we just went through in detail of revenue. You subtract the $444,750,810 that 5% pay increase budget would cost. If you look in your detailed packet of their 5%, if you look on the very last page of that 5% detailed budget, in that very first column, the 2021-22 budget, that final bottom line expenditures, you will see that exact same number that's in that summary, $444,750,810. So that is to the dollar, all detailed out through the budget, what's being spent with what. You subtract those estimated expenditures and you arrive at an assigned, unassigned ending fund balance at June 30th, 2022 of $24,529,924, which makes up 5.52% fund balance compared to annual expenditures, which is above the 3% minimum. And we wind up with a budgeted deficit of $18,276,769, which is an estimated deficit. Note at the very bottom of this one-page summary, the current fiscal year 2021, the original approved general purpose school fund budget had an original deficit of $15,031,505. So with this 5%, we're going to add over $3 million to that deficit with that proposed amount that we're looking at right now. That's too much. I mean, without asking for additional revenue from the commission. That deficit is, I believe we would actually wind up with an actual deficit if we stayed with that. If you notice on the 4% and the 3%, you can see the budgeted deficit goes down a few $1 million for each one. The 3%, and I'm back on the one-page summary, the 3% increase leaves a estimated budget deficit, and that is if we brought in every dollar we estimate, we spent every dollar that we budgeted to spend, we would arrive at that budgeted deficit of 12.3 mil. We would be pretty much the same budgeted deficit at that 4%, with a 4% pay increase that we've got for our original budget because of the increase in our revenues that we've got this year. If we go to the 18 million, you're looking at back to what a penny brings for the schools, you're looking at around 3.5 cents in property tax, the equivalent of that increase to fund the 5%. The 4%, we basically say neutral.
$750,000.
Yes, sir. But that, in a nutshell, and I can go through anything in this detailed budget you want, but I figured you guys would want to see, show it to me, where are we at? We've gone through the detailed revenue because we haven't done that before. We've gone through the detailed expenditures. I can answer anything you want in there, but I knew you guys would want to see when our revenue came in, what does it do to the budget? Because I know you hadn't seen that yet. And that one-page summary shows you, where we brought in the 3% because we didn't know, then we went to the 5%, and now we can see what the 5% will do with the revenue that we have available. As far as the 141 fund, that's all I have right now. Take any questions you have.
Any questions?
I would also add to this, speaking with the county finance director, currently the county departments within what is in front of the budget committee for the county departments, they're looking at a 4% increase for the county departments for their employees.
Just a little information about our local area districts, school districts. I think Williamson's doing a 4%, Murfreesboro doing a 3%, Metro's doing something. Who knows what they're doing? It's one of those.
$6,000
We're going to have an issue
or something. Yeah.
They're already having appeals, like sizable commercial appeals to their reappraisal. So, that what they're doing, time will tell what will happen there, with what they think is going to materialize out of that reappraisal in their growth on their property tax. The other item I wanted to point out is one reason we were able to, looking at what we're at right now, the 4%, that's not such a large deficit. One of the reasons was this board fighting so hard with that insurance to make sure the employees did not get a large increase. If it had gone to 10%, we wouldn't even be talking about the 4%. The 3% would be looking more like the 4% deficit. So I just want to say thank y'all, because that was good to help with lowering that budgeted deficit.
We want to say thank you for heading up that committee. You did such a good job.
Well, thank you, but if the elected officials don't back you, then it doesn't materialize. So it's y'all.
Right.
Thank you.
It's an equal partnership.
One of the things, we want to compensate our teachers. And one of the things Doug and I have been talking about, and Dr. Sullivan, in terms of how can we provide help for them this coming year, and at the same time not go way off the deep end, and is looking at through ESSER 3.0 providing an additional personal day during the next school year. And we can do this very easily in terms of, we've kind of worked up a cost factor, I think we did. And I think this would go into addressing some of the, social and emotional health and things of that nature. Now, we're also addressing our kids, so I don't want anyone to think that we're not doing that either. But I do think this would be a good way of showing them that we are addressing their needs.
I think that'd be a good move. What was the impact on that? About $50,000 or?
For the 1 day off, it's
It was
about,
like, I don't want to say 800, close to 700,000 to 800,000.
yeah.
Oh, is that much? Wow.
That's if they take it, right?
We,
It'll
Take it.
roll over, right?
It will
If they
roll
don't take
over.
it, it'll roll over.
Yeah.
It'll help their retirement if
Right.
they decide to do that.
That's correct.
I love this idea.
There's another thing we've been talking about doing for years is trying to equal out the classified and certified. I know we can't do all of it at one time, but we have got to keep focused on that. We run into issues every time we run out of snow days or anything like that, or people not getting paid. So I know we stepped in this year and allotted money for them to get paid, but there may be some years we can't do that if we don't equal that out. So.
I know the cafeteria were always the lowest, and with what the changes has happened this year with the cafeteria fund, I've got some real high hopes that next year, that was one thing we could do, is bring the cafeteria classified employees up for those snow days, so they have additional ones like the classified over in GP.
Well, that'd be great, but we need to bring them all up, We don't want to leave anybody out, because
I think
okay.
Mr. Chairman, do you need a motion on Mr. Spurlock's suggestion, or how do we?
Whenever everybody's ready,
a motion to approve either the 3%, 4%, or the 5%.
Okay.
And then just for clarification, this additional personal day, is that already built into the budget, or are we going to vote on that?
That will be in our 142 fund.
What it'll be is when we submit the application for ESSER 3, that will go in to the application.
Do a budget amendment.
Yes, sir, we'll bring it back.
Budget amendment, and then come back and reimburse the 141.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, real quick, that will be probably September at the earliest. That application window, we are still waiting on a lot of timelines from the Tennessee Department of Education of what it even looks like for us.
Absolutely.
And
I will say that Dr. Sullivan and his group have had some meetings. Quite frankly, we're waiting on a lot of uncertainty from the State Department of Ed. I wish they could rule on that like they can charter school. Good.
And there'll be some sizable budget amendments for federal grants this next fiscal year, like what we're talking about. I did not put it in this budget because it's one-time recurring money, and I wanted to show you folks the recurring money that, if we're talking about pay raises, I don't want to do that, and then year after next, I went by the way.
any other questions? We ready to entertain a motion?
Mr. Chairman, you need a motion as to which percent will be 3, 4, or the 5?
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we do the 4% raise for our employees. I think it's the most fiscally responsible, while still, there's a lot of uncertainties, but but I think that's the most fiscally responsible. So I would make a motion to entertain the 4.5%.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
4%, excuse me, 4%.
Mr. Estes, second. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
You have, the next right behind that is the cafeteria fund, Fund 153. Have a 4% and a 5%. Well, yeah, I noticed I had not put it on 3%, but I was hoping, I noticed that it would be 3%. What I would ask for is that you would make a motion to marry the Fund 143 to 4% as well. That is the same budget that you voted on last time, but it's at 4% instead of 5%.
I think that would only be the right thing to do, right? The 4%?
Traditionally, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but traditionally, what the GP received in the cafeteria and the federal project funded would receive too.
I think the only thing is the budget itself, 143, because of the salary increase here, needs to reflect a change through a motion.
We voted for
This budget.
this budget with a 4% increase for the cafeteria fund. That's your first page right here.
Any questions? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
All right, Mr. Estes, do we have a second? Ms. Bratton, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Last one, and I'll stop. I'll hush. Is the very last page is your Fund 177. This is the Educational Capital Projects Fund. It has no employees in it. However, because we had an increase in the property tax, the estimate, I, of course, increased that property tax line. So I'm asking the board to vote on this updated budget for 177 to reflect that increase in the property tax estimate.
Any questions on this? Do we have a motion?
I move to approve. I second.
All right, Ms. Bratton made the motion, Ms. Maxwell second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, thank you very much. Appreciate all y'all's hard work getting this together. It's good to know that we're giving our employees a good raise.
From 0708.
Okay, number 4, rethink. Is there any discussion we need to do on that, or just hold off? Okay. All right. Any other questions or issues we need to discuss?
So, Mr. Chairman, clarification on tomorrow's meeting, location and the time, because I believe it's starting later, correct?
5:30, yes,
5:30.
at the courthouse. Yep. All right. If everyone's good, we're adjourned.